Good evening, everyone. My name is Father Stephen Thorne, and on behalf of Bishop Ward Campbell, Valerie Washington, our Executive Director, and the entire board and staff of the National Black Catholic Congress, it is a blessing to welcome you to our first webinar of this new year 2026, Budgeting for Beginners, a step-by-step faith journey. It will be recorded and looking forward to a great conversation today. It will be archived for you to have as your ongoing information in this important topic for our people. We are very blessed tonight to have as our presenter Mr. Joseph Cobb. Joe is originally from Chester, Pennsylvania. As a certified public accountant, has had many, many years in the area of finance. He's an active member of St. Barbara Catholic Church in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. He's a family man, a man who lives out his faith and who serves our country well in the Army National Guard. He represents the many young, gifted Black Catholic people of our church. And we are very so proud of him tonight and all he has done and will do for our church. He is part of that rising leadership of the church that will keep the Congress moving forward for many years to come. Today is the feast of St. John Newman, a Redemptorist missionary, the fourth Bishop of Philadelphia, who came to this country to serve immigrants as he was one himself. In his very short time in his ministry as a bishop, he accomplished so much. He built parishes and schools for those who were left out, those on the margins. He began the 40-hour devotion for many, many people to adore our Lord in the Eucharist. But also, he went out in service to those who were most in need in our church. And also, Bishop Newman started a bank, the Beneficial Bank, which still has its legacy today, especially in Philadelphia, where he was as bishop. So we serve an on-time God, church. As we talk about finances tonight, we do so on this feast of St. John Newman, a man who knew we had to go from the altar to the street to serve God's people. Again, very happy to have you. Welcome all. You're coming in one by one. I see it from all over our country, and we're so glad to have you. But as all things, we begin in prayer and ask God to bless our time together. Let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good and gracious God, you love the world so much, you gave us your Son, Jesus, as our Savior, who brings new life, new hope, and new joy. And we give you all the honor and praise. And we thank you so much for gathering us in these first new days of this new year for this conversation. Bless all of us who will listen to our speaker tonight. Bless Joe that he will give his witness and his wisdom and all the gifts that God you've given to him to share with others. May we leave this experience more committed and more dedicated to build that home in your kingdom where you live and reign forever and ever. Amen. Again, once again, welcome everybody. Good to have you all here. And again, it's my pleasure to turn it over to a young man I've known for many years. I'm very proud of Mr. Joseph Cobb.
Thank you, Father. I appreciate you for doing that. Thank you, for everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you to the National Black Catholic Congress for allowing me to present this information that is much needed within today's society, with everything feeling like it's so expensive and feeling like we just can't get ahead. Income is remaining stagnant, but prices are always rising. So thank you, and we'll get started. So just give a little bit more background. I know Father Steve, I've known him since I was in second grade. When he graduated from a seminary, he came to St. Catherine Drexel at the time, Blessed Catherine Drexel. So shout out to my SKD family that may be on here tonight, and also shout out to my St. Barbara family that's on here tonight. Just give you guys a little bit of background about myself. I am a licensed certified public accountant in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I am a graduate of Newman University, where I earned my undergrad degree in accounting. And then I went on to Wilmington University, where I got my master's in accounting. Actually, since this is a feast day of St. John Newman, I actually worked at Beneficial Bank. So it's so crazy that it's a full circle. Being able to work at there at 1818 Market Street in Philadelphia for a couple of years in their cash management department. So I have a little bit of background in banking, public accounting, and also governmental accounting. I actually got my start in accounting because of my dear mother. I actually wanted to go to school to become a teacher and become the greatest high school football coach in the state of Pennsylvania and Delaware. But she told me, no, you're not going to go to school for teaching, because she herself was a teacher. She was a special ed teacher for many years in the school district Philadelphia and Chester Upland. She said, "You're going to go to school for accounting." And being where I came from in the city of Chester, I didn't know any accountants. I had no clue as to what an accountant was, what an accountant did. Never even heard of the term until she told me about it. So I went off to Newman and pursued that degree. Took a class my sophomore year, almost 20 years ago, my first accounting class, and I actually wanted to quit and give up on it. And here I am 20 years later, glad I stuck it out and got my degree. So we'll get started. Thank you again for joining. And thank you to the NBC and Father Steve for allowing me to give this testimony. So, start off with our first thing. Why does budgeting matter? Remember, budgeting is stewardship. As we can see in Luke chapter 14, verse 28, it reminds us that for which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the costs? Budgeting is the blueprint, or you could call it the framework of our financial foundation. It stands on. Without it, we're walking in the darkness, trying to figure out why we're living paycheck to paycheck, or maybe we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Just remember that budgeting isn't just about numbers. It's about aligning ourselves with God's purpose. When our money is messy, our hearts are restless. So the more we build a habit of becoming aware and intentional with our money, the less stress that enters into our lives, and the more confident we become, and the better we are to support our communities, our churches and parishes, and our loved ones. I always believe that money isn't really the root of all evil. I believe the lack of awareness and intentionality is truly what the root of all evil is when it comes to money. Stewardship includes caring for our families, supporting our parishes, and lifting our communities. Budgeting is an act of worship. It shows God you care about his gifts, the gifts that he gives you. So here's an example story. I know we probably all ran into that one grandmother, maybe it's a father, it's a mother, a cousin, an auntie, an uncle, maybe even a friend in your life. And you've known them and you know that they don't really have much. They never had much. They don't have the glamorous jobs where they're making the bankroll or anything like that. They've always worked a humble job. But somehow they've always been able to help either the grandkids, the nieces and nephews, the cousins, their own children, and they're always able to give to the church. And the reason why that is because they budget carefully. And that right there is stewardship in action. So I probably should have started off with this, but if you haven't, if you want to use your phone, if you want to grab a piece of paper, I'll give everybody about maybe a minute to grab a piece of paper. We're going to have 7 activities that we're going to go through, and we're not going to share them. This is just for you and your personal, because I know finances is a very personal thing, very intimate thing. But if you have a spouse, maybe if you want to share with your spouse, go ahead. No judgment. So I'm gonna give everybody about a minute to take this down and write down some of this reflection right here. If you don't have a piece of paper, you go grab it now. But I want you to write down these 3 things. Write down the question and the answer to what you may be experiencing. So the first one is, what's your biggest worry about money right now? Then the next one's going to be, is it bills? Is it maybe your debt? Is it maybe trying to save, whether you're trying to save now or trying to save for retirement later? Or maybe it's just not knowing where all your money goes at all. But write those things down. I'm going to give you guys about a minute based on my clock right now, starting now, to write down. And again, we're not sharing this. This is just for you. It's just something to take a little deeper dive to help us to really reflect on where we're struggling with our money and how tonight we could maybe break some of those barriers to go into something bigger. Okay. All righty. I hope you guys are able to write that down. We're going to go on to our next slide. So let's talk about the different types of budgets that are out there. The first 3 sets of types, and there's many types of budgeting things that you can use that you could do. I just picked the 3 most popular that are what we call a system-based budgeting. So we're going to talk about some budgets. These budgets rely more on simple habits rather than complex calculations. So for all my people that aren't really great at math, shout out to my little sister. She was never the greatest one with math. I could pick on her tonight because I know she's okay with that. These are the type of things that can help you to manage your money by setting general rules rather than tracking every cent down to the decimal. So for those that aren't really good with math, they don't really care much for spreadsheets. This is going to generate that habit of a system that's so important to budgeting. So the first system that we have here is called the proportion method or the percentage based method. So this one is basically going to use simple rules like the 50-30-20 rule. You may have heard of it, where we're going to split our income into three different buckets: our needs, our wants, and our savings/debt. It requires very little math once you know the three main numbers, which is going to be your needs, your wants, and your savings. It's a great fit if you want a clear structure without needing to be a math expert. It works by looking at your total take-home pay. This is the amount that lands in your bank account after taxes and everything is cleared. It's everything that's going to clear your bank account. And we're going to split it into these three buckets based on the percentage. So 50% will go to our needs. Now, what are our needs? Our needs are those things that we have to have in order to survive in today's society. So think of like your rent or your mortgage, your transportation costs, whether you're catching public transportation or if you have a car and you need gas, grocery shopping, you need groceries, some of your utility bills. Those are the things that we need to have in order to survive in our society. So 50% is going to go to that of your income bucket. Another 30% is going to go to our wants. What are our wants? Our wants are the things that I like to call the things that make life a little bit better. So these are the things like our gym membership, things that we like, but we don't necessarily need. Some of those are subscriptions that we have. Sometimes even maybe some of the add-ons that we have for our cell phones. Maybe taking out takeout for dinner or going out. Those are our wants. Those are the things that are going to pretty much go into that 30% bucket right there. And then we have our last, which is 20% is going to go into our savings and our debt plan. So we're going to put that right into either paying off our debt or right into our savings, wherever that may be, whether we're saving for retirement, saving for a rainy day fund, or maybe we're just saving because we like to save our money. Now, remember, with the 50-30 rule, you don't have to do 50-30-20. You could do it however and whatever fits your lifestyle. The most popular that most people use is just 50-30-20, but you really have to adjust this to you. That's the one nice thing about personal finance. It's not a cookie cutter. It really, everyone's situation depends on you. As someone who practices taxes and during tax season, a lot of clients are saying, oh, this, and that, but really it's very unique to the individual. And that's the same thing with budgeting tonight. So everything we talk about, you have to really figure out what is best for you and your situation. So let's go into the second method. And this is called the pay yourself first method or the reverse budget. And with this one, this is probably the most math-like version. So if you really hate math, you don't want to use it, this is probably best for you. You simply decide on your savings goal. So you're going to decide on how much you want to save. And you're going to take that out of your paycheck immediately. That's the first thing you're going to do. You're going to take it out. And then you're going to spend the rest however you need it until it's gone, basically. So the core idea here is to treat your future self like a bill that must be paid as soon as your paycheck arrives. So this is also what you could call the pay yourself method. So whatever that goal is, but once it comes out, it's gone. You're going to treat it like a bill. It's just like the light bill. Once you pay your light bill, if you're paying Pico, it's gone and it's not coming back. And that's the same thing with this. You have to treat yourself as if you're a corporation and try to build that discipline of once it's gone, it's gone. And if you need to, it may be best to even open up a separate bank account. So that way it's out of sight, out of mind, and set it up automatically where you don't have to worry about maybe putting the $20 away today and then tomorrow you're taking it back out. That's going to kind of defeat the purpose of this right here. We're going to pay ourselves immediately. And then after that, however you spend the rest, you spend it until it's gone. We're just going to, one of the greatest quotes I ever heard was, no one's going to treat the old you like the young you. So that's what this method is doing here. Is pretty much setting your future self up for whatever it is that you're trying to do by paying yourself first. And then our last category here in our system budget is going to be the category method or the envelope method. And what this is basically going to do, it helps set up those visual and physical ways to budget. So what you're going to do is you're going to take some cash out and put it into envelopes in different categories, whether it's groceries, fun, light bill, gas money. And when the envelope is empty, you're basically done spending in that category for however long you set your budget up, whether that's for weekly budget, a monthly budget, a bi-weekly budget, a quarterly budget. There's basically no math required. You're just gonna. It's a very hands-on way to budget that relies on those physical boundaries rather than tracking numbers in your head or on a screen. So you're just gonna take the cash out, put it in an envelope. Once the envelope's empty, you're done, and that helps to set up those categories where you're not overspending on your groceries, or you're not overspending on something that's fun, or you're overspending on your light bill. So that's the envelope system. So those are our three systems, and again, these are basically for people who don't like math. You don't want to track it every down to every penny, but what you want to do is you want to set up a system of empowerment for yourself. That's what these are going to do. So our next three types of budgets are more math intensive. So these are more for if you're an accountant like me and you just love spreadsheets, you love setting up those formulas, you love tracking everything down to the penny. These are more for optimization. So these are a little bit more sophisticated with the structure. And at this stage, we're basically our goal is to shift from tracking to optimization. What we're doing is we're making our money work harder through more sophisticated structures. So the first one, which is my personal favorite and one that I do in my personal life, is the zero-based budget, or some people like to call it the precision method. So what this does is this involves giving every dollar a specific assignment before the money begins. And it's basically a very highly effective for maximizing investments and aggressive debt payoff. But it does require more detailed planning than a basic budget. It's a powerful way to move from simply watching your money to giving it every dollar a specific mission. So basically, when you set up your budget, whether you set it up weekly, bi-weekly, I'll use myself for example. I set up a bi-weekly budget because that's how I get paid. My pay system is bi-weekly. So every 2 weeks, I set up my budget where at the end, my income, once I get to the bottom line, I should be at zero. There should be nothing left in my bank account the day before I get paid, which is actually going to be Wednesday. Wednesday, there should be nothing in my account. And he asks, well, why is that? Why would you want to set up where you have zero in your bank account? Because I already know what's coming out and I'm tracking everything before my budget even sets. And I set it up where I know I should be at exactly zero. I'm tracking every penny. I'm tracking every dime, everything that's coming out. I'm keeping every receipt and I know what's coming out. And the biggest thing with this budget, with the zero-based budget is I'm going to pay myself first. And also I'm going to tie first because we'll get into that a little later, but that's because of my core values. So I know that at the end of the day, my budget is going to be zero. But don't get it twisted. You're definitely going to set it up where you're going to pay yourself first. So you're paying your future self to make sure you're savings for a rainy day. The next optimization budget is the bucket or the silo system. So this is more of a structural method. This uses multiple bank accounts to automate your financial goals. And what it does is it moves beyond simple tracking by creating physical barriers for your money. So what we're doing is we're going to open up multiple bank accounts with wherever you want to bank out, whether it's Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citizens Bank, and you're pretty much just going to create those physical barriers for your money to ensure that when you go to pay the mortgage, it's not touching your tax money and it's not touching your long-term savings. They're never touched by mistake. So think of this: if you're married, maybe you guys have a joint account, like me and my wife. We have our own separate personal bank accounts, but then we have a joint bank account, which we both don't bank at, that we send our household bills into. So we have that physical barrier where it's like, all right, this is going to a separate bank, and I'm setting this up where it's going from my bank, my personal bank, into our joint account. And that's what you would do as an individual. If you don't have a spouse, or if you do have a spouse, you would just basically set up multiple bank accounts through different. You can set up through different banks or through your own bank. It's probably easier if you set up through different banks. And each bank account has a detailed job, and they're not touching each other. So they're not speaking to each other, not seeing each other, but those bills are coming out of that, so you know exactly what it is. So basically, when your paycheck arrives, it is immediately distributed into those silo bases based on their specific purpose. So you can set that up probably through your HR nowadays with the technology of direct deposit and splitting your check down. Or if you want to do it yourself, you could also do it that way by automating. And our last budget here is the value-based budget. And this is also called the intentional method. And this is basically going to focus on frugality in the areas that don't matter to you so much, so you can spend extravagantly on what does actually matter to you. So it really involves analyzing the return on investment of your lifestyle spending to ensure your cash flows align with your long-term life goals. This method requires a deep dive into your psychological and long-term goals. This entry point, it really explores how to build giving and charity, not as a leftover, but more as a core value that drives every other financial decision. So just to give you an example for this one, for the value base, I look at my brother, right? My brother really values nice clothing, the latest sneakers. He's very, I guess we call it trendsetter when it comes to the fashion stuff. He really likes to keep up with the trends. Me personally, I don't. I'm cool with going to shopping at Walmart. I'm cool as long as I got a good pair of running shoes. Everything else doesn't really matter to me. So for him, when he goes to set up his value-based budget, budget, he may spend a little bit cheaper on food, so that way he can spend more on his clothing. And for me, I'm going to spend cheaper on my clothes so I can spend more extravagantly on my running shoes because I love to go run and I love a good pair of running shoes. So that's what the value based method is going to do. It's really just going to be more of a reflection of who you are as a person and what your core values are. And it's going to drive those financial decisions. So, what's the steps that we're going to take in order to figure out what kind of budget what are we going to do with our budget? So, no matter what type of budget you decide to set up, the first step is really to know your income. That's the first thing we're going to want to do. Step number one, because tracking your income is the first and probably one of the most crucial steps in building a budget because it sets the boundaries for all of your other financial decisions. So without an accurate picture of what's coming in, it's really impossible to know how much we can actually spend or what is actually going to go out. Think of a budget like a roadmap for a road trip, and our income is going to be the fuel in our gas tank. You can't plan how far you're going to drive if or where or when you'll stop if you don't know exactly how much gas you have to start with. So that's what our income is. It's the fuel that's going to drive our budget. So let's explore this matter through a couple of different things, different lenses. So we're going to look at three different lenses. The first one is going to be called the reality check. This is going to help us to explore the difference between our gross income, which is the big number before taxes or any pre payroll deductions for your benefits, and our net income, what actually hits our bank account. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our net income. We're not going to look at our gross. I know when we get a new job, we get excited. I'm making X amount of dollars. I'm going to budget. Sometimes we budget around that X amount of dollars, but we forget that we're still going to have those deductions that are going to come out of our paychecks, such as taxes, those payroll taxes, those tax deductions, or not tax deductions, but those health benefits and other benefits that may be coming out, such as our 401k. So we really want to plan and use that net income and not the gross income in our reality check. And then how do we handle those irregularities? So if you're learning how to track your income, and if your paycheck changes from week to week, if you're like a freelancer, or if you're someone who works a lot of overtime, such as like maybe a cop or an EMT, or if you work maybe in the tips industry, as in the restaurant or the hospitality industry, what you want to do is you don't want to overspend during those slow months. So how do we handle those irregularities? What we're going to do is we're going to actually budget based on that extra money not coming in. So if you get a lot of overtime, we don't want to budget based on and include our overtime as our fuel within that budget, because that overtime can be stopped at any time. I know in my industry, we're coming into our busy season. There's going to be a lot of overtime, even though we don't get paid overtime. But with that being said, a lot of overtime would be available, technically speaking, if we were, excuse me, if we were qualified for that. So I wouldn't want to set my budget up or my income up based on the overtime that I'm going to receive, because I know at some point that's going to stop. It's not going to continue on, and it's not part of my regular paycheck or salary. And then the last thing is going to be the psychological one. We want to see how our total income can change our mindset from scarcity to management and to stewardship. So that's the biggest thing we want to do, is when we write down our income and we see what our total income is, we want to really go from changing our scarcity, where, hey, I only made this much this week, or hey, I only make X amount. I can't really spend that much money. We want to go from being scarce to really managing our money, where it's like, okay, I made this much, but now I need to manage this. and I need to become a better manager of this. And that's going to help us with our stewardship. So, how does this tie into our faith? If we look at the book of Proverbs, chapter 27, verse 23, it says, "Be sure you know the condition of your flock. Give careful attention to your herd." So today, our flock might be our paycheck. But here's something I want. Not sure if you guys know or not, but did you know that sheep? I heard this the other day. Are really one of the only animals that can't survive without human interaction. And I tied this into my faith because when I realized this, thought to myself, "Wow, this is why we call God our shepherd. We really can't live without His grace, His love, and His mercy." And part of that is putting trust in Him, like sheep do with with their shepherd. And we do that by knowing that He will provide for us in a way to use our income as long as we are good stewards of what He has provided for us. He'll provide for us as long as we are good stewards of what He has provided for us. Okay. So we're going to go into our next activity. So I'll give you guys another minute, and I just want you to write down all your sources of income right now. Don't forget the small ones. I know a lot of times some people will forget their side hustles, they'll forget their gifts. Even if you're on here and maybe you're just a babysitter, and you haven't really answered the I guess what some people like to call the real world. Even if you're just doing that, and then add all your income up, add up all your sources of income. And remember, we're not going to include the overtime, the bonuses. Um, we're not going to include any of that extra money. We're just going to include only those solid salaries that we're definitely going to get. And I'm going to give you guys a minute, and I'm going to be quiet for and let you guys get started on that. All righty. I hope you guys are able to write that down. And these slides, if you need them, they'll be available. If there's anything that you missed, and I know we're recording, so this will be on the NBC's YouTube channel, and it'll also be on my YouTube channel once we're doing. So if you feel like you missed anything, please don't feel like you need to rush. You can definitely get this video. I'll have my contact information at the end, so you can contact me if you have any other questions outside of this if we don't get a chance to answer them. So, what's step two? Step two is to list your expenses. So if we're tracking, while we're tracking our income tells us what we can do, just know that tracking your expenses reveals what we're actually doing. It's the reality check of personal finances. So without it, even the most perfect budgets is just a wish list if we're not tracking our expenses. And we want to explore why this habit is the engine that drives our financial success. It's one thing to know our income and we can track it all day, but if we don't really know what our expenses is, it's like having an engine without a car. If our income is the fuel, if our budget is the GPS, our income is the fuel, so we know how far we could drive once we fill that bad boy up. Whether we're on a quarter of a tank, if we could get from, I live in Overbrook, so I'm gonna use a lot of analogies. If I could get from 57th Street to 63rd Street on a quarter tank and make it there, then that's cool. Now, but can I get from my house to St. Barbara's on a half a tank? All right, I know I could do that with my income, but my expenses, that's the real part. That's the engine that's going to make everything go. It's really going to give us that reality check of, all right, we know what our income is, but what can we actually spend this on? Where are our limits? So, what are three of the things that we're really going to want to look at when we are looking at these expenses? The first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to identify our value leaks. Often we lose money to small, mindless habits, such as like subscriptions we don't use, convenient fees, like if you go into the ATM and there's a fee attached to it, or daily treats that add up to hundreds of dollars a month. When we track this, it shines a light on these leaks. So you can choose to spend that money on things that actually matter to you. Excuse me. I'll use I have a twin sister, so I'll use her as an example. I don't think she'll mind me putting her out there a little bit like that. So my sister, I was helping her a while back with budgeting and managing her money and whatnot. And one of the things that she had brought up as I was looking and asking her questions and poking around. And as an auditor, we ask a lot of questions if you don't know. So one of the things I asked her, if you never dealt with an auditor, there's a lot of questions, a lot of details. And I had asked her, or the one thing she ever revealed to me, excuse me, one thing she ever revealed to me was 6 days a week she would buy a large coffee from Dunkin' Donuts. And I'm thinking that's a adds up pretty quickly. And she was like, "Yeah, I mean, it's my little sweet treat. It's not really that much money. I think it's like maybe $2 a day at the time." So you could tell how long ago this was when we were talking about this. But she said she would spend 6 days a week. She would get a large coffee from Dunkin' Donuts. That was her thing. I know they say Dunkin' runs on America runs on Dunkin', but Ariel runs on Dunkin'. So and I sat back and I did the math and showed her the math. I said, well, if you're spending $2 a day, 6 days a week, that's $12. That's pretty close to $12 a week. If my math is mathing, which is doesn't sound like a lot in a week, but then that's $24 over 2 weeks. Doesn't sound like much. $48 in a month, which isn't a whole lot. But when you really expend that, I had this written down, but let me do the math on it. But when you really expend that over the year, that's $576 that she was spending a year just in Dunkin' Donuts large coffee when she probably could have made that coffee at home for a lot cheaper. And even though $576 may not sound like a lot, but think about Christmas time when we always forget, oh man, I got to get so and so a gift. I got to get this person a gift. Or think about so and so's birthday's coming up and I just don't have the money. You have the money. We're just spending it in a value leak, things that don't truly all the way matter to us. So we got her on the right path. So you got to think of those value leaks in your life, those small habits that add up very quickly over time. The next thing we have to do, which a lot of us sometimes when we think of a budget, we think, oh, this is the mundane thing. It's almost like working out, like, oh, this is the mundane thing. I have to stick to this. I have to stick to this. But it's not that. It's not that. I'm telling you, a budget is a living document. It is a living document. If you budgeted $400 for groceries, but really you're consistently spending $500, tracking that gives you the data you need to adjust. And that's the biggest thing with a budget is you want to be able to adjust and pivot because life happens. Life happens. Who would have thought? Who would have thought what's going on in the recent news lately? So having that data really helps you to adjust. You can either find ways to save at the store or move money from different buckets to cover the costs when you're budgeting. I know for me, the biggest thing with this that comes up in my house with my wife when we adjust our plan, when we first got together and we were first dating, and we would go to the grocery market, me, growing up in my mom's house or Renee's house, we ate a lot of generic brands. It wasn't going to be a whole lot of other things. So my wife, she grew up, they love the name brand stuff at the markets. She was doing all those things. So she likes to get the Tostitos chips. I like Los Tito's chips. That's the store brand if you don't know. And it's a lot cheaper. The quality sometimes is there, sometimes the quality isn't there. But we had to find a way to manage ourselves or to really meet in the middle to make sure that we were finding a way to adjust both our plans to meet what we needed to do to fulfill our household. And number three, when you're tracking your expenses, you really reduce your financial anxiety. Much of our stress comes from the unknown. And when you track your spending, you remove the mystery of where your money went. And this leads to a sense of stewardship because we know exactly, because then you'll know exactly how you're managing the gifts that God has provided you with. And that's the biggest thing that we want to do. Like I said earlier, we want to move from a stage of scarcity to a stage of management and a stage of stewardship. When I think of this, I think of a lot of people. Probably most of us on here have some kind of anxiety related to financial anxiety or stress from how am I going to pay this? How am I going to make it this month? I'm a little short on this. Like I said, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. But when we move from the unknown to the known, it really helps us to see the big picture and it really helps us to become better managers of what we ultimately want to do, which is become maybe your goal. I know my goal growing up as a kid, my siblings would tell you, I never wanted to be rich. I just wanted enough money to pay my bills and be happy. My brother, on the other hand, he wanted to be rich. He wanted to be richy rich. But the only way we both can reduce our financial anxiety is by tracking and whatnot. So I got a quick story here about a good friend of mine named Marcus. I was helping him, and he thought that his only subscriptions were Netflix and Hulu. And I'm pretty sure we all are like Marcus. I know myself, I'm included in that. I know my wife, she is definitely included in that with these subscriptions. It's crazy. But Marcus, my good friend Marcus, he actually ended up having 5 subscriptions, not just the 2 that he thought. And the only reason why he found that was because he started tracking his expenses, and those subscriptions actually ended up adding up to almost $100 a month. And that was money that could have gone into a savings or supporting his parish outreach. So just think of yourself in your life and find where some of those leaks are and how you can fix it. So we're not going to take the whole 3 minutes, but what we'll do is we'll take about 2 minutes. And what we'll do is we'll do an expense dump. I'll give you guys 2 minutes. And what we're going to do is we're going to write down every bill you could think of. And when we write these down, you're going to want to put at the top all uh, your fixed expenses first. And what do I mean by fixed expenses? Fixed expenses are those expenses that you know aren't going to change from month to month. Those are just the things that are pretty much going to stay the same. So think of your rent and your mortgage. Think of some of those utility bills. For the most part, your cell phone bill, all those subscriptions are usually going to stay the same from month to month. And then after that, we're going to talk about our variable expenses. And what are the variable expenses? Our variable expenses are based on our output. So we're going to think of groceries, transportation costs, um, anything else that pretty much is tied to, depending on our usage, it'll really be more variable costs. And then don't forget to put in your fix. Don't forget to put yourself if you haven't already. Write down yourself as your first fixed cost, because you need to be in there. That's the one way we could give back. Yes, you can write the number as well. Write the number and write down what it is. Write down both. That's a good question, Rita, my sister Rita out there. And be honest. Be honest with yourself, because this is really between you and God. Like I said, we're not sharing this with anyone unless you're on with your spouse. And if you guys don't want to share, it's a judgment-free zone. Do your thing. But this is between you and God. So write down all of your expenses. Think of all the expenses that you have, and write them down. And you'll be surprised. We're just going to do an expense dump. Like I said, this is a judgment-free zone here. We're like Planet Fitness. This is between you and God. And you know what's in your heart. You know what you're spending your money on. Give it about another minute, and then we're going to move on. Okay. And remember, if I go too fast, this will be available on YouTube, and it'll be available um, later on. If you need the slides at the end, I'll have my contact information. I can send these slides out and whatnot. Okay. So what's step number 3? Step number 3 is we're going to track our spending. To truly master expense tracking, we have to find the right balance between accuracy and effort. So there are, we're going to go over 3 methods of tracking first, real quick. So the first 3 methods of tracking is going to be, the first one is going to be a manual or any log. So this is your old school style where you're just using a notebook or the envelope system. This is great for building muscle memory and feeling the weight of every dollar spent. So all you're going to do is almost just like a checkbook for all those that remember the checkbooks back in the day. I remember my mom used to love it. She had her checkbook. She would write down every penny that went out, every penny that came in, and she would use that checkbook and flip it over, tap it, and go on to the next one. She would use that. Or you could lose that. Then for those that may not know what the envelope system is, that's basically where you write down all your expenses and you put it in an envelope. Or you could just use a simple notebook. You can use a simple notebook. So that's what the manual method is going to be. The next method of tracking is going to be digital. This one's going to be more manual entry. So this one's more of like my expertise, which is going to be using a spreadsheet or a dedicated app where you manually type in every transaction. This offers like more of a middle ground of convenience and awareness. I know this is what I personally do, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but I'll let you guys know now. One of the things I'm going to tell you guys to do is create a money day. Create a money day where you're going to set down time, and that's your day, and that's your time where you go in and you actually track this stuff. You don't have to do it every day. Me personally, I do it every day because I mean I love numbers. I'm an accountant. Glad I went to school for it. Glad I'm working in the field. Uh, but if you're not really looking to track every day, you're going to want to set up a money day. And we're like I said, the digital method is if you're a little more tech savvy and you want to use those spreadsheets and you want to use an app or whatever, you could definitely do that where you could type in every transaction. And then the last step of tracking is we're going to use the automated or syncing method. And what this is basically going to do is you're going to connect your bank account to an app that categorizes your spending for you. This is probably the fastest method, but it can lead to autopilot where you stop paying attention to the total. So you got to still go in and make sure you're looking at it to make sure you're tracking it because it's no good in having it, but you don't go in and check it to make sure you can adjust your lifestyle and see where you're maybe overspending or where you have those value leaks at. So that is the more of the automated syncing. I don't really recommend that all the time because, like I said, you kind of out of sight, out of mind. That's really good. This is really good for savings, but I wouldn't really do it too much for tracking my expenses, the auto syncing. So once we have tracked our spending, what's the next thing that we want to do? The next thing we want to do, and what you guys can do is take a look back at the last 30 to 60 days, print out your bank statement for the last, maybe if you want to go back 6 months, 30 days, 90 days, 60 days, is we're going to do an audit. We're going to want to do a good audit on our spending and what we spent our money on. And part of this audit process is just going to be a financial examination of our conscience. That's all that it is. It's just a financial examination of our conscience. Instead of looking forward at what we plan to spend, we're just going to look backwards at what's already happened. So the first thing we're going to do, I think I kind of mentioned it already, is we're going to want to collect. We're going to collect those bank statements, those credit card bill statements, the receipts. It's probably easier just to use your bank statement. I know sometimes they can be a little confusing, but we just want to go back and look because we're collecting data. That's what we want to do. We're going to look at the last 30 days. If you want to go back just 30 days, if you're really motivated and dedicated, 60, 90, 6 months. And we're gonna take that, and then what we're gonna do next after we collect it, we're gonna want to categorize. We're gonna want to assign every transaction as a need, a want, whether we saved or whether we're paying off debt. So that way we can kind of see, all right, well, this was a need. I definitely needed this in order to survive. And be honest with your needs. Don't think that takeout at TGIF Fridays for $50 was a need because it's really not. It's a want. You can cook at home. Um, and don't think that, oh, I need my gym membership because you really don't need that gym membership. You can always work out outside. God gave us beautiful, beautiful outside, even when it's cold. You can still work out outside. So just don't get your needs and your wants confused. Be honest with yourself. That's the biggest thing. Be honest with your needs, your wants, and your savings. So you're going to want to categorize everything into one of those into one of those buckets, whether it's a need, whether it was a want, and whether you saved or whether you're paying off debt. And then after you do all that, you're going to want to add up the totals for each category. So you get your total for your needs, get the total for your wants, and get the total for your savings. And then you're going to want to ask yourself, did the wants bucket surprise you? Remember, we're doing an examination of our financial conscience. So did your wants bucket surprise you? Did your needs bucket surprise you? Did you have some value leaks? Were you not maybe as a good steward as you thought you were? But there's no judgment. So this is just data that's going to allow us to set up a realistic budget going forward. Okay. And that's the biggest thing we want to do. We have to have the data in order to set ourselves up going forward. We're just going to reflect. That's the last step in that. And then we're just going to look back and just look at it, the last 30 days of spending to categorize our needs versus our wants and just really become more conscious of where we are and where we want to go. The biggest thing in this step is really overcoming the I'm too busy hurdle. And this is what I was talking about, creating that money day. My money day is actually today. It's Mondays. It's Mondays. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I hope nobody from my job is on here, but Mondays I usually get into work at 7, and from 7 to about 8:30, I am locked in on my personal budget. I know I shouldn't do it. Lord forgive me, but I just have to be honest with you guys, and I have to be very transparent. Mondays from 7 to 9:30 in the morning, you can catch me working on my budget. You can catch me putting in some of those receipts that I may not have did over the weekend, and I'm looking at, geez, these kids are expensive. This wife is expensive. They want to do something every weekend. We can't just sit home and watch TV. We got to do all this other stuff, but it's all good. It's all good. It's all fun when you have the family. It's good bonding time. So yeah, So how do we overcome this I'm too busy hurdle? What we're going to do again, and what we're doing here tonight is we're setting up a budget, yes, but the biggest thing we're doing is we're starting new habits. We're breaking old chains and starting new habits and putting systems in place that can help us get to where we want to go financially, whatever that may be. Like I told you guys earlier, growing up, I really did not care much to be rich. That wasn't my strategy. That wasn't my plan. I just always told I wanted to have enough to pay my bills, take care of my kids, and be able to travel a little bit, and that's cool. My brother, on the other hand, he wanted to be richy rich. He wanted the big mansion. He wanted to have 10 houses. He wanted the Cadillac Escalades on 20s. He wanted all that with the spinning wheels. Can't forget about that, the spinning rims. So the biggest thing is, like I said, we just want to track that spending. So we want to get from a simple strategies on how to track in less than 2 minutes a day. But the only way you could do that is by setting up a money day. Because most people, believe it or not, um, quit tracking because they let it pile up until it feels like a mountain. And the secret is to lower the barrier to entry. And the way we're going to do that is by creating three habits. The 60-second rule. What is the 60-second rule? It's where we record the expense the moment it happens while waiting for your receipt or walking to your car. If you got an iPhone, I don't have an Android, so I don't know how Android works, but I'm pretty sure it works the same way. If you have an Android, you can actually probably text yourself. I do it a lot of times where I text myself, I put my own number in and I text myself. I know it sounds kind of lame and corny, but hey, I do that. But if you have an iPhone, you can use that Notes app and you can and write down what the receipt is if you need to. That way, it gets you into that good habit. And that's the thing that we're building here tonight. We're building habits and systems. It's bigger than budgeting. We want to break those old chains that we once may not have had before. So we want to get through the 60-second rule. We want to write it down as soon as we see it, and then maybe we could transfer it to wherever else we need it to go. If you're good with Google Sheets, I know I'm not really big into the Google products, but if you have Google Sheets, that could go everywhere with you on the go. So and even Microsoft Excel, you can take that everywhere on the go. So that's a good thing. The next one is we're going to want to do a daily huddle. And this is where we spend 2 minutes every night. 2 minutes. Think about all the time we spend on other mindless things. I think we could spend 2 minutes every night before bed just reviewing our daily spending, just looking at what did I spend? Where did my money go today? How was I being a good steward for God? Was I being mindless with my money and really spending on things I shouldn't have been? Or was I being a good stewardess? And then the last one is what on my notes here is called the Sunday sit down. But in reality, I know we have church folks on here, so we're going to call it the Sunday sit down. But for me, when I talk to a normal client, it's your money day. That's all that it is. If doing it daily too much, you want to set aside 15 minutes on a timer on whatever day you choose. Just make sure that whatever day it is, you turn your phone off, put it on do not disturb, where all you're doing is you're really just looking at your financial picture and seeing where you are, and you're logging everything from either the week or for the day before, however you want to do it. But you really want to set those good habits of setting a money day. When I think of this, like overcoming the busy, it reminds me of that parable in the Bible of the master and the three servants, where the master gave out he gave treasures to all three of his servants, and the two servants went out. They did great things. They brought back a great investment on the master's stuff, and then you had the one servant who pretty much buried it because he got scared. We don't want to be like the third servant where we just bury God's gifts, because these are gifts that God has given to us, and the reason for those gifts is because He wants to bless us. And that's the biggest thing is we can't say we're too busy. We make time for everything else. I think we can sit down and make time to make sure we go through it. So how does this tie into our faith? This is going to correlate to 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2. Now it is required that those who have been given trust must prove faithfulness. Think about that. It is required that those who have been given trust must prove faithfulness. So how can you prove your faithfulness to God? By sitting down and making sure that you're being a good steward of the gifts that He has given you. It's not about what you make, it's about how you manage it. So we want to go from saying, oh, I'm going to fix it. I don't know if my auntie's on here, my auntie Charmaine, but if she is, she's always, I'm on a fixed income. I'm not like y'all, I'm on a fixed income. But when she says that, she's a good stewardess of her money. She's just letting us know, hey, don't ask me for no money now. I ain't giving out no loans. Y'all too old for that. But she's a good stewardess of her money. She's not saying, "Oh, I'm a good what's it called." So like I said, I got to be honest. I got to be real because you guys are here and you want to hear the real. So Um, I got a little story about my personal stuff. I can't lie. I used to be a smoker. I liked smoking cigarettes at one point, and I recently quit on Halloween. A lot of people probably really don't know that about me. But yes, at one point in time in my life, I did like to smoke cigarettes. And I was recently away in September for one of my army trainings, and my smoking had went up. I increased my smoking due to the stress of the class. It was a really intense class that I was in, and I was tracking my spending while I was out, and in my budget, the way I have it set up, I have a sin bucket, I'm shameful when I look at my sin bucket because it's got my alcohol, it's got my cigarettes, it's got my little snacks that I like to get, the little gummies. My wife knows I'm so addicted to gummies. And when I looked at it over the course of my 21 days that I was at the army, when I came back home, and I said, "Wow, I spent $150 on cigarettes." When I normally spend about $60 a month, I started right there and then. I said, you know what? I really need to get over this addiction because God has blessed me and I'm not being a good stewardess of the gifts that He has given me by wasting it on something, number one, that's detrimental to my health. Number two, I can stop hearing my wife and my sister Jazz nag to me about, "Oh, you need to quit." So I decided right there after seeing that, you know what, I'm going to just give it up. So that leads us into activity number 4. This is the 7-day challenge. Now, if you don't want to do 7 days, maybe you want to challenge yourself, do 14 days. I'm going to tell you right now, I challenge you to do 30 days. I challenge you to do 30 days to write down this promise to yourself. For the next 7 days, I will track every dollar I spend, big or small, it all counts. Big or small, it all counts. And then when you track it, put it into those buckets. If you're not very, if you don't like math, put it into those buckets. Is this a need? Is it a want? Am I paying off debt or am I saving? And I'll tell you, I guarantee you, you'll be like me, where at the end of the challenge, however many days you set, you'll be surprised at where your money is going. And then you're going to ask yourself again, was I being a good stewardess of the gifts that God had provided me? Because He's always going to provide for us. The question is, are we taking advantage of what He has given us and being a good steward and doing His will with our money? Don't be like me. All righty, we're going to go on to the next slide. So, budgeting is great. It's a good tool. It's good for us to see like where we're going to be at with our money, what we want to do. But honestly, none of budgeting means nothing if we're not setting goals. Setting goals is the why behind every dollar that we move. Without goals, a budget is just a dry list of math problems. And unless you're an accountant or uh, uh, someone who loves math, a math teacher, who really likes those big math problems? But when we have goals, it becomes a roadmap to the life that we want to lead. In a Catholic content, goal setting is a form of stewardship. It is the intentional planning of how to use God's gifts to care for your family, find peace, and most importantly, help others. You see that theme coming up, family, stewardship. It keeps coming up, keeps coming up. That stewardship, management. That's what the goals are going to do. So let's explore why goals are the engine of success for budgeting. Number one, it's going to set a direction and purpose for us. When we have the goals, they help give our money a destination instead of wondering, where did my money go? Goals allow us to say, this is where my money is going. Now we're in charge. We're no longer a slave to our money. Now we are the master of our money. So we're going from being slaves to being the master. So we're going from where did my money go to this is where my money is going. We're being intentional. Whether it's saving for a new home, whether you want to go on a pilgrimage or you want to do some kind of child education, having a target makes it easier to say no to impulse buying so you can say yes to your dream tomorrow. One of the things with my wife, she is such an impulse buyer and she loves the latest gadgets and everything. So she's always on Amazon. And I have to tell her sometimes, no, just say no. We got other goals that we want to live up to. Number two, having what his goal is going to do. It helps us with our motivation and discipline. Sometimes budgeting can feel restrictive if you don't have the right reasons for it. And a goal will transform a sacrifice into a choice. There's a big difference between a sacrifice and a choice. So when you skip an expensive dinner to put that money towards an emergency fund, you aren't just losing a meal, you are gaining security and peace of mind. When I think of this, I think of my little sister, Jazz. She loves her Starbucks, and recently she's kind of given up her Starbucks habit because she has some goals, some financial goals she wants to reach. So she's really started making her Starbucks at home instead of going out buying. I'm super proud of her for that. And lastly, it's going to help us to measure progress. These goals are going to help us to measure our progress. Goals are going to allow us to track. It's going to allow us to track our success. Being able to see that you're 50% of the way forwards for a specific financial milestone provides a psychological win that encourages you to keep going. Okay. So let's talk about goals for a quick second. What type of goals do we want to set? We want to set SMART goals, a SMART goal framework. And if you don't know what SMART is, actually an acronym. And I'm going to go slow for this one if you want to write this down. So SMART, the S is going to be specific. We want it to be specific. We want it to be measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. That's what SMART goals are going to do. So it helps us to go from a concrete, from a vague wish into a concrete, reachable goal. And we're going to use specific formulas for that when we turn our budget into a roadmap. So we're going to go from a weak goal, which would be, I want to save money. And a SMART goal is going to say, I will save $1,000 for an emergency fund by June 1st by setting aside $200 per month. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. So we want to move from just having weak, vague goals to strong, SMART goals. And then we're going to want to break our goals down in the short term versus medium versus long term. We're going to want to categorize our goals by time. If you have short-term goals or anything under a year, these are those immediate targets that provide quick wins and they're sustainable. You need the money soon, but it should stay in a low risk, accessible place like a standard savings account. And then we have our our medium goals, which is anything between 1 year and 5 years. These are things like you want to buy a new car or you want to go on a major wedding anniversary trip. They require a little bit more discipline, but they're a lot more short term than having a decades long runway of such things like our retirement. And then we have our long term goals. This is anything over 5 years. These are big picture dreams, and they take a lot more work and they require a lot more investment. These things are more like I want to save up for a down payment on a house. I want to retire early, maybe, so I want to put more money away. I want to leave a legacy by starting a endowment at my parish. I want to save for my child's education. These are more of those long-term goals that are going to take a little longer. And then the next thing we're going to look at is value-based goals. These are where we align our financial targets with our faith and your personal values to ensure your budget reflects who you are. Goals are not just about the numbers. They're about stewardship of your resources to reflect your deepest convictions. This approach helps you to move away from keeping up with the neighbors and towards spending that brings you genuine peace and purpose. So when we set up these value-based goals, the first thing we're going to do is identify those core values. So before setting a goal, we have to define what actually matters to you. Is it family? Is it hospitality? Education? Or perhaps maybe it's just radical generosity. When we look at our spending history, we want to see where our money voted in the past and decide if that matches where your heart true's priority is. I know one thing Father Steve always says is, show me where you spend your money and I know where your heart is. Father Steve always says that and always resonates with me because I know it comes somewhere else, but he always says that and it really resonates. So you have to really reflect after you start tracking your expenses and you see where your spending is. You want to really look down and say, hey, where are my core values based on my spending? Is my spending matching my core values or are they not? And if not, why not? How can we fix that? That's the thing we want to do. And then the next thing we want to do is we're going to do the trade-off strategy. And these are value-based budgets that require making those hard cuts in low-value areas to fund high-value ones. So, for example, my sister and my brother, they love to travel. They love to travel. She's got more stamps than the post office, I'll tell you. She's got more stamps than the post office on her passport. But like I was telling you guys before, she loved to spend money, or my money, honestly, on Starbucks. She loves spending her money, but really she loves spending my money, hitting me up. Hey, can I get some money for Starbucks? So right there, we identified there's a value leak. And once we saw that, we redirected it towards her travel fund. So this transformed a no to Starbucks and a yes to a meaningful trip. So they just came back from, I believe it was Colombia. I guess they came back just in time with everything going on. So that shows that trade-off where we go from looking at our lifestyle and where is that value leak that we were talking about earlier, and how do we go from having those value leaks and changing it from having those leaks to who we are as a person. And then next and lastly is going to be how do we use this as an impact and towards our legacy. This involves looking at goals that extend beyond yourself. It might include creating a tying plan that feels joyful rather than obligatory, or a saving for a legacy fund that allows you to help others in times of crisis. It's about using your financial health to be a blessing to your community. So, how does our faith really tie into this? We can look at the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 11. For I know the plan I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. So when you start to track your spending and you start to look at setting up your goals and you start to look at your values, think about Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. How are you putting your trust in the Lord? How do you know the Lord wants you to plan and prosper and not harm you? So are you being like me where you're buying cigarettes to harm you and you're not really being a good stewardess for your health or for your money? Or are you being like my sister where you're taking away, you're saying no to Starbucks, but putting into your travel fund? So that way you could plan for your hope in your future. All right, we're going to keep this next one short because I know we're kind of up on an hour. I'm sorry, I thought this would be a little shorter, but once I get to talking, sometimes I can't stop talking. So we're going to take 1 minute and we're going to do the vision exercise. So what we're going to do is you're going to write down one short-term goal, less than a year, one medium intermediate goal, somewhere between 1 and 5 years, and one long-term goal, anything that's over 5 years. And when you do this, think about your faith, whatever your religious background is, whether you share the same faith as me as a Roman Catholic, or if you're any other kind of denomination, or maybe if you're any other religious beliefs. Think about your family and think about your community too. That's a big one. How do you want to impact your community? So I'll give you guys 1 minute for that one. And then we're almost at the end here. I really appreciate you guys hanging in there with me tonight. Truly could have been anywhere in the world, but you were here with me, and I truly value and appreciate that. All right, we're going to go on. So next, we're going to kind of make our own budget here. So we're going to start with the 50-30-20 rule. And what we're going to do is we're going to put, since this is the easiest one out of all the budgets, we're going to put 50% of our needs, of our spending of our income into our needs, 30% of our income into our wants, and 20% into our savings and debt. And we're going to emphasize making this adjust to our real life. So remember, it doesn't have to be 50, 30, 20. Your number could be whatever it is. Your family may have a higher percentage of needs than me. You may have a higher percentage of wants than me because maybe your needs aren't as needy. And you may value debt and savings, so that may be higher. You just have to adjust this to whatever your lifestyle is. So just think about that. And then don't forget to include yourself in your budget. As I said before, yourself and your faith community, wherever that may be. Whether you're going to the masjid, whether you're going to St. Barber's, whether you're going to wherever you are, make sure you put that in there. And make sure you make yourself a line item in your budget along with your faith giving. Those are two of the most important things that you can do in order to prosper. So include yourself in that. Now, we'll give you guys 1 minute. And remember, this will be up on Zoom because I know we're, for the interest of time, to write down your income at the top. We're going to create our own budget. Write your income at the top. And you can do this later. We'll do this later, actually. Write your income at the top. And then assign your money to your needs, your wants, your savings, your debt, and your giving. and then adjust it until it balances, whether you want to use a zero based budget, or if you just want to budget all the way down. And this is going to be your first draft budget. So I'll leave this slide up for a little bit so you guys can write it down. And I'm going to move on to the next slide. And the last step, which is probably the most crucial step to me when we're doing any kind of budget, is to review and adjust. This is such an important part right here. It's like I said, a budget is often misunderstood as a rigid set of rules, but in practice, it functions more like a living document. It's flexible because life is unpredictable. I think we all know that. Life is so unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen. From your income, your expenses, and your priorities can change at any moment. I just think of anyone that's a parent out there like myself. Um, the unpredictability of when you have kids, they just don't stop growing. Um, and that expands your expenses sometimes. As your family grows, how do you grow your income as your family grows? What are your priorities? So remember, life is always changing, so your budget should also be changing. And don't forget, think of your budget as a GPS for your money. If you hit a roadblock, like an unexpected car repair, or take a detour, like a sudden change in pay, the GPS doesn't stop working. It just recalculates to find the best path to your destination. And that's the biggest thing that a lot of us do. We get into a roadblock and we forget. If you got an iPhone, you know if you use the iPhone maps, it's going to say recalculating. That's what we want to do with our budget. We want to recalculate, find another destination. We don't want to hit that roadblock and think that just because we ran into a car repair that's it. No, that's not it. Or we run into a detour such as a change in pay that it's going to start working. No, we have to be resilient and we have to find another way. So why is flexibility and monthly review critical? It provides real world accuracy. So prices are forever changing. Think about gas, groceries, and how they fluctuate. A fixed budget would definitely break the moment prices rise. Think about how much gas is going up and down, up and down. I'm always looking at gas prices and just looking at the fluctuation. It's been pretty crazy over the last couple of days. So the next thing is life transitions. Like I said, there's a lot of big changes in life, like a new job. If you start a new job, if you're moving homes, or if a medical event, God forbid, happens, it's going to require your money to be reassigned immediately. So those life transactions are going to happen. So we have to make sure that we're able to be flexible. And then goal alignments. Monthly reviews ensures that you aren't just on autopilot. They allow you to see if you're actually getting closer to your SMART goals. So that's another reason why I want to sit down and review. How close am I getting to this goal? How far off am I? Where can I go to make sure that I'm on the right path? So, how does this tie into our faith? Think about Philippians chapter 4, verse 12. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secrets of being content in any and every situation. And that's how we have to be. My mother used to always say, you can never get too high during the good times. You can never get too low during the dark times. You have to be even, Steven, all the way through. And that's what our budget is. We just want to keep that balance. Think of yourself on a balance board or a balance beam. You want to stay even all the way through. So here's another story about it, reviewing and adjust. So when I was younger, my mother would drive me and my siblings. We would drive to school, we would drive to practice, church, wherever we were going. She was driving, and she would never really take the highway. So she didn't like taking 95 or the Schuylkill Expressway or the Blue Route. She always took what she called the back roads, but I put that in quote back roads. She really took the main road. So that's like if you're from Chester, 291 was the main road. If you're in West Philly, 63rd Street, Market Street, all that. So her back roads was really just the main roads. And it would be kind of crazy because whenever something would happen on the highway and the main roads would become packed with traffic, she would yell out, do people not know any other way? And as we got older, probably when we were in middle school, me and my siblings, we would respond smartly and say, neither do you, Mom, obviously. And she would just tell us to be quiet. So just remember, don't be like my mother and think that people don't know another way. Just remain flexible in your budget. We all know when back to school is. We all know when our loved ones' birthdays are. We know when Thanksgiving is, and we all know when Christmas is. But the crazy part is when people ask us if we're ready for these events, we often respond with as ready as I'm going to be, which usually lacks a little bit of confidence. But with budgeting and proper planning, we can be more confident and say, oh, yeah, I'm definitely ready. I've been ready. I'm game time ready. All right. So, our last reflection for tonight is this. I want you to write down one area of your budget you think you'll need to adjust often. Where would that be? Would that be maybe on your takeout? Would it be in your subscriptions? Is it maybe you have a bad sinful? I'm not gonna not to judge anyone, but I'm gonna judge myself. Like where you like me, where you had a bad sinful habit, where you like smoking cigarettes. Where is that? Where is that? And that is actually going to conclude everything tonight. I apologize, Father Steve. I know I went a little over, uh, but that is it. Oh, let me. Hopefully, you guys got that written down. I'm gonna go on and show you guys my contact information. Here's my contact information. If anyone would like to get in contact with me, I have content up on my YouTube channel around budgeting, taxes, small business accounting. Same thing on Instagram, TikTok. If you want to follow me, I have a website, and that's my email. If you have any questions regarding tonight or something else that maybe wasn't answered, we can definitely go over it later. And I apologize for going over. Did you want to? Do you want me to answer any questions, Father Steve?
And I got 3 credits and a homily. I mean, that was amazing, my brother. Thank you
I
so much.
appreciate
Show him
it.
some love, y'all. Put that in the chat. Blow the chat up and just thank Joseph for doing a great job tonight. My mom would often ask me when I came home from school, she would say, Stephen, what did you learn today in school? I was always about learning. And as a teacher myself now in full-time ministry, I'm always looking for how I can grow. So before we leave tonight, put in the chat something you learned in the last hour or so. What did you learn from this information? I know I learned about being honest, how important that is in our life. I learned about how a budget's a living document. It's a living document. It's something we can always have to adjust because life is unpredictable. I learned about the importance of starting a new habit. What a great intention to have as this new year begins. Start new habits and start small. And again, we just want to thank Joe for being very practical and very honest. And I am so glad I'm going to Starbucks because you would have called me out if I went to Starbucks with like your sister. But no, seriously, thank you for your honesty, your own personal honesty, and also how you just brought it all together for us and helped us here at Congress. We are a national organization that's helping to write an agenda. We are umbrella for all Black Catholic entities and organizations, and we're a hub where people can come and go as they become the mission disciples that we're called to be. So thank you so much, my brother. Blessings to you and to your family in this new year. And again, this has been recorded. It will be available on the National Black Catholic Congress website. Shout out to Ms. Kimberly Hefner and Ms. Valerie Washington for all the great work they do for the National Black Catholic Congress. And you can see, please get in contact with Joe. He did my taxes last year. I didn't go to jail, so I'm happy about that. So, but no, seriously, be in touch with him as far as how he can be of service. This is a ministry for him. It's not just about simply, making good money or just simply doing things because it's good. It's really about, it comes from his heart and his spirit. And so I'm so glad to have this time together. May God's peace and God's joy in this new year be with you. And may our Blessed Mother Mary watch over all of us and keep us close to the heart of Jesus. May, amen, and Happy New Year to you all. God bless you.
Thank you, Father.
You're welcome.